Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Foundations First Education series. My name is Connor Reed, and for our second installment, I will be talking about voter registration and the ways to participate in our democracy as a voter. As we approach Election Day, these two topics will play a key role for both candidates looking to ensure the voters will be able to cast their ballot for them. It enables you at home to step up and step into your role in the voting booth. So, without further ado, let's get started. Registering to vote is a critical step in voters casting their ballot. No matter what state you live in, you will need to register before being able to cast a ballot. Each state will have different processes for registering. For instance, many states require that individuals register before a certain deadline in the election calendar. Other states, like Wisconsin, allow voters to register at polling locations on Election Day. Some states require voter identification, while others do not. Some states require that you register to vote before every election, and some states maintain voters on their rolls for many years. Each state is different. However, they are all similar in that voters must register prior to casting a ballot. Without registering to vote, you will not be able to do so. As I mentioned a moment ago, the steps in which a voter can register to vote will vary from state to state. However, there are a few ways that most states let an individual register to vote. One of the most common forms of this is the standard paper voter registration application. This can generally be found on your state Secretary of State, municipal clerk, or governing election board website. This most commonly is a 1 to 2 page document that an individual can fill out and submit, oftentimes with a form of identification if required by your state. You'll either mail the form in or return it to the appropriate authority listed on the form. Some states have begun allowing individuals to register online. Depending on the state, the Secretary of State page or a dedicated website run by the state government will allow an individual to register online. If your state permits this, be sure to provide your identification if required. Often, after registering to vote online, the state may ask you to present your identification when at the polling location to complete your registration and receive a ballot. Another option to get your name on the rolls is as a byproduct of the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, also known as the Motor Voter Act. This allows you to register to vote when you go to your Department of Motor Vehicles to receive a driver's license. This especially helps younger people who are getting their license for the first time and looking to register to vote simultaneously. One of the best things you can do, either as a candidate or as a citizen, to promote this ideal is to help register other people to vote. It is very important that prior to this, you look at your state's laws for registering voters. For instance, in Wisconsin, anyone can register anyone to vote. They simply can provide the individual with the state-run website for registering people to vote and instruct the individual to fill it out. Other states, however, require special voting deputies, also known as SVDs, to do this voter registration process. It can vary from state to state, so please be sure to look at your own state's regulations prior to engaging in this activity. Now, you may be asking why someone would want to help register voters. Well, if you're a candidate, it is a great idea for your campaign to help register people to vote because it captures additional bands of likely supporters. For instance, if you're a candidate out at an event, as you talk to individuals and get them to promise you their support, ask them if they are registered to vote. If they say no and your state allows, help them fill out their voter registration application either online or in paper form. You have a greater chance of someone casting their ballot for you if you help them register to vote and get engaged with our democratic process. Keep this in mind if you decide to run for office in the future. Now, as I've mentioned multiple times so far, voter identification laws are important to be aware of when registering to vote or helping other people register to do so. Almost 40 states now require voter ID to vote and register to vote, so check to see if your state requires it prior to registering individuals to vote. The other reason is more about promoting American democracy and fair and free elections. No matter what political party you may favor or what political leanings you may have, there are few things more important to American values than promoting voting in our elections. Helping individuals register to vote allows American democracy to grow and prosper. So, if your state mandates special voting deputies, consider volunteering in this role or with an organization that registers voters in your state. And let's promote the democracy that underpins our republic together. Let's now shift away from voter registration and learn more about how to vote yourself. While primary election dates can vary from state to state, the general election date is the same, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, unless you have an upcoming off-cycle town election in the spring, summer, or some other time in the fall. While this long-standing tradition of voting on this day allows individuals to always know when upcoming elections are and when to participate, it does not necessarily make it the most convenient time for individuals to vote. Consider this. A single parent working multiple jobs during the day might not have the time to vote during the time the polls are open. Between dropping children off at school, commuting to work, picking kids up from school, and going to another job, this voter might not have the most time to vote on a Tuesday. Or another scenario, an older voter lives most of the year in Indiana, but spends a few months during the winter in a warmer state. Since they do not live in this warmer state full time, the individual will be voting in Indiana, but they might not be living there on election day. So, what are these individuals to do? Well, we have two ways for individuals to still cast their ballot. Vote by mail, also known as absentee voting or no excuse vote by mail, as permitted in some states, or early in-person voting. Let's take a look into both of these ways to cast a ballot. Voting by mail or absentee voting is a popular way to vote across the country. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, many individuals, like the two examples we gave earlier, chose to get their ballots by mail. Individuals receive their ballot in the mail, fill it out, and return the ballot to the address given on the return envelope, generally the local clerk's office, or by dropping it off in a secure ballot drop box. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a large increase in mail-in voting. Many states, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, had very strict procedures to follow at polling locations, and many municipalities reduced the number of polling locations available to voters. This, combined with older individuals or those more at risk of contracting the virus and developing serious illness, made many people choose to vote by mail to reduce risk. Since the COVID-19 pandemic elections, across the country people have still opted to vote by mail rather than in person due to its convenience. Individuals who may be away from their home during election season, like the older individual living in Indiana but spending winters in a southern state, can vote by mail and receive their ballot wherever they are visiting. This makes it very easy and efficient for individuals to cast their ballot. It also gives more people more opportunities to vote, furthering American democracy by meeting voters where they are. Now, another great way to cast your ballot, if you cannot vote on election day, is to vote early in person. Sometimes referred to as absentee in-person voting, many clerks of local elections or local administrators will have their offices or another location such as a library open to the public during a certain time frame prior to the election. Depending on the state and the timeline, you might even be able to register to vote at one of these locations day of. The process is just like you would see at a polling location. The voter will enter the office or location where the voting takes place. The voter will talk to the election official or volunteer to confirm who they are and their location to receive the correct ballot. Voters will then enter the voting booth area and fill out the ballot they received, just like you would at a normal polling location on election day. Individuals will then submit their ballot according to state statutes to the election officials, who will place the ballot in a secure area until the day of counting absentee ballots. In most states, the process of early voting is considered absentee voting, just like voting by mail. Both voting by mail and voting in person are safe and secure ways to cast your ballot, in addition to voting in person on election day. As we continue to circle back to this idea that every state has its own rules, from the process on how to vote, early in-person voting, voter registration timelines, and whether or not you need a government ID to vote, every state will vary in its regulations. The same holds true for the timeline for early voting to take place. No matter the state, every election will have a deadline for individuals to get on the ballot, except for write-in candidates, and election administrators will have deadlines for which ballots will have to be printed and mailed by. It is important that you look into your state's specific laws and regulations to determine the time frame you will have to vote early, either by mail or in person. No matter how you choose to vote, on election day, in-person absentee, or by mail, and no matter who you are voting for, it is important to fulfill your civic duty. Voting is a core right as Americans, and we must honor it by voting in each election and staying current with local, state, and federal policies. Make sure that you, your friends, family, and fellow community members are registered to vote. Once registered, make sure you and those people cast their ballot. American democracy can only be sustained and furthered by voting. Thank you all for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us via the email on screen, and someone on our team will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks again, and have a great day.